Hey everyone, welcome back to Max Reddit Tales. I'm Max, and I'm here to bring you the wildest, most unforgettable stories the internet has to offer. And trust me, today's tale is one you'll be thinking about long after it's over. If you love jaw-dropping revenge stories that make you say, "No way that actually happened," go ahead and hit that like button. And if you haven't yet, subscribe so you never miss your weekly fix of drama and justice. Now, grab your favorite snack, settle in, and let's jump straight into today's story. They thought it was a secret affair dinner until I walked in with her husband. My name is Clara, 41 years old, a lecturer in business administration at a university in Denver. My husband, Lucas, and I had been together for 17 years. To the outside world, we looked solid. Two professionals with steady jobs, a modest home in the suburbs, vacations every summer like clockwork, dinner parties with friends who toasted our strong marriage. People thought we were the couple that made it. What they didn't know was that behind that pristine glass was a slow, silent fracture, a growing distance, and a truth I had spent far too long pretending not to see. That evening, Lucas was in the shower, the sound of rushing water echoing softly behind the closed bathroom door. I sat on the edge of our bed, reviewing a few slides for an upcoming class. That's when I heard it. A soft ping. His phone, face up on the nightstand, screen still glowing. It was just a single notification, harmless on the surface. But some messages carry a weight you can feel before your mind catches up. I glanced at the screen. Table for two confirmed at Lumiere. Friday, 7:30 p.m. Window seat, wine pre-arranged. It hit me like a cold slap. The air thinned. I blinked, wondering if I was misreading something. My heart didn't race. It dropped. The reservation was too curated to be professional. I had never been the type to check my husband's phone. Trust was something I guarded fiercely. But in that moment, some deeper instinct kicked in, primal almost. A voice that said, "You already know. Stop pretending." My hand reached for the phone before I had time to second-guess myself. He hadn't set a password. Or maybe he had, but disabled it, assuming I'd never look. That assumption was his mistake. A few taps later, I found it, the email confirmation. The name in the message, Sophie Walker. The subject line, "Can't wait for our night, window seats, how romantic." Everything inside me turned to stone. Sophie wasn't just a name, I remembered it. She worked at his firm in internal communications, always at the office parties, always hovering near him, laughing at jokes that weren't funny. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't throw the phone or knock over a lamp like in those melodramatic movie scenes. I just stood there, holding it, and stared at the evidence of my own undoing. For months, maybe a year, I had convinced myself that the distance between us was just stress, work deadlines, life happening too fast. But now, there was no more pretending. Every cold kiss, every missed dinner, every unfamiliar perfume clinging to his shirt collar. None of it had been in my head. My intuition had been screaming, and I had been muting it with denial. "Have you seen my blue tie?" Lucas called from the bathroom, casual, like nothing in the world had changed. The blue tie. The one I bought him during the 2008 financial crisis when we were barely surviving and he needed confidence walking into an interview. That tie had meant something to us, or at least it had meant something to me. "Second drawer," I said, my voice calm, emotionless. He didn't notice. He stepped out of the bathroom minutes later, fixing the knot on the tie I once wrapped around his neck with love. He kissed my cheek like he always did and left with the same briefcase, the same confident smile. "Good luck with the Japanese clients," I said on his way out. He smiled. "Thanks, babe." He had no idea I had already seen the truth. No idea that his secret dinner wasn't going to stay a secret much longer. When the door closed behind him, I didn't cry. I walked into the kitchen, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat at the table staring into the dark surface of the liquid until it went cold. I didn't fall apart. Instead, something else rose in me. Something sharper, calmer. A version of me that had been asleep for years but was suddenly, terrifyingly awake. I picked up my phone and called the university's HR department. "I need to take a short leave, just a few days," I said. No one asked why. I didn't offer a reason. After hanging up, I sat down with purpose. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to allow him the drama of a confrontation he could twist into an apology. I wanted something else, something colder. Truth, exposed under candlelight. His lies pulled into the open like worms in the sun. I searched for Sophie Walker on LinkedIn, then Facebook, then Instagram. She was easy to find. Glossy selfies, motivational captions, and a very public marriage to a man named Ethan Walker, an executive architect in downtown Denver. Ethan had kind eyes, the kind that looked like they once believed in forever. I didn't know him, but I knew what it felt like to be lied to. He deserved to know. But I couldn't just message him and say, "Your wife is having an affair with my husband." That's not how this needed to go. As a university lecturer, I had one small but useful power. I could invite guest speakers to my seminars. So, I crafted the perfect email. "Dear Mr. Walker, my name is Clara Whitmore, and I currently teach project management at Metro Denver University. We're currently running a speaker series on sustainable urban planning, and your work in the Rivergate Business District caught my eye. I'd love to invite you to dinner to discuss a guest lecture opportunity. I've made a reservation for this Friday at Lumiere at 7:30 p.m. If you're available, it would be a pleasure to connect. Warm regards, Clara." It was strategic, clean, disguised, and it placed Ethan exactly where I needed him to be, just a few feet away from the woman he thought he could trust. 2 hours later, he replied, "Thank you for the invitation. That time works perfectly. Looking forward to it." Looking forward to it. He didn't know, not yet, but by Friday he would. The final piece of the plan was seating. I called Lumiere. "I'd like a table for two near the window, if possible," I said. "Of course, any other preferences? Actually, if it's possible to be seated near the Hamilton and Rothman reservation, we're potential collaborators, and it would be good to stay nearby." It was a soft lie, and it worked. "Noted, we'll place you close," she said. "Thank you," I replied. When I hung up the phone, I felt the first sliver of peace I'd known in days. I didn't want revenge, I wanted revelation. I wanted to watch the illusion collapse, gently, in real time. They thought their affair was hidden, wrapped in the darkness of their own self-delusions. But on Friday night they would dine under candlelight, with secrets still on their lips, and I would be watching, with Ethan Walker beside me, and every lie between them would be just a few tables away from crumbling into the night. That night, I didn't sleep again. Not from pain this time, but from purpose. I sat in the living room with only a lamp lighting the corner. The wedding photo on the shelf caught my eye. Lucas and I, years ago. Smiling. Happy. Or at least, pretending. I didn't throw it away, I didn't smash it. I just whispered to it, "She can have your lies. I'm taking back my truth. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want a fight. I wanted something quieter, something unforgettable. A moment so sharp, so simple, that it would cut through everything they thought they had hidden. I wanted them to choke on the fantasy they built in the dark, while Ethan and I sat just steps away. They thought this dinner would be their secret. But what they didn't know was that I had already picked out my dress. I had already reserved my table, and I wasn't coming alone. Friday night arrived like the calm before a storm. The city lights flickered on as I stood in front of the mirror. adjusting the teal silk dress Lucas once told me was too loud for a quiet dinner. That night, I wore it like armor. My hair was pinned into a soft bun, makeup light but sharp, and the champagne-colored heels I'd never dared to wear outside the box, they were on. I wasn't dressing to impress anyone. I was dressing to remind myself that I wasn't the fragile woman Lucas thought he could lie to forever. I arrived at Lumiere 20 minutes early. The restaurant was beautiful. Dim lights, soft violin music, the kind of place people go to fall in love or pretend they're still in it. A waiter led me to our table. It was perfect. From that seat, I could clearly see the one where Lucas and Sophie would sit. Candlelit, window view, a private world, or so they thought. I ordered a martini. My hands were steady, but my heart wasn't. It pounded, not with fear, but with clarity, the kind that only comes after you've been lied to long enough to stop asking why. "Miss Whitmore?" a deep voice said behind me. I turned. Ethan Walker stood there, tall, sharp in a dark shirt, his expression polite but tired. Maybe from work. Maybe from what he didn't yet know was about to unfold. "I'm really glad you came," I said, rising to shake his hand. "Thank you for the invite," he said. "The topic you brought up, urban design and sustainability, it actually interests me." We sat down, we made small talk. Architecture, city planning, education. Ethan was warm, intelligent, and humble, but my eyes kept drifting to the entrance. And then they walked in. Lucas wore the gray blazer I gave him last Christmas. Sophie wore a tight red dress, walking beside him like she owned the world. She laughed, flipping her hair back, and Lucas looked at her like she was the center of it. When he pulled out her chair, I saw the way his eyes lit up, the way they used to light up for me. My grip tightened around my glass. I kept my tone even as Ethan spoke, but my mind was racing. They didn't see us yet. I watched Lucas pour the wine, his fingers grazing Sophie's hand. She giggled, tilted her head. Her earrings sparkled in the candlelight like they were celebrating the betrayal. And then it happened. Lucas looked up, his eyes met mine. He froze. Completely. The glass in his hand tipped just enough to spill, if not for the waiter rushing in to catch it. He didn't move. His face lost all color. Sophie, confused, followed his gaze and saw me. Then she saw Ethan sitting across from me. She blinked like she had seen a ghost. I turned calmly to Ethan. "Excuse me for a moment," I said. "I need to use the restroom." He nodded politely, unaware of what was coming. But I wasn't heading for the restroom. I was walking straight toward them. As I stepped past the final row of tables, Sophie suddenly stood up in my path. Her voice shook. "You're Clara, right?" I nodded slowly. "And you're the woman holding hands with my husband under the table," I said softly, "while your own husband is sitting 10 steps away." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her face turned pale. "Please," she whispered, "not here." "Why not here?" I asked, tilting my head slightly. "Isn't this the perfect place? Candlelight, music, soft wine. It's all set for a beautiful night. Unless, of course, truth ruins the flavor." "I didn't mean," she started, but I raised my hand. "No excuses, just answers, and I think Ethan deserves one." I turned my head slightly. "Ethan?" I called. "Could you come here for a second?" He stood immediately and walked toward us. His expression shifted from confused to deeply concerned. His eyes bounced between me, Lucas, and Sophie. "What's going on?" he asked. I looked directly into his eyes. "Ethan, this is my husband, Lucas, and I believe you recognize your wife, Sophie." The entire restaurant seemed to fall into a silence so thick you could hear the weight of it. Lucas stepped back like someone had shoved him. Sophie's hands flew to her mouth. Tears welled up. Ethan stood still, silent, staring at Sophie like he was seeing her for the first time in years. I didn't yell, I didn't curse, I didn't slap anyone. I simply said, "Enjoy your dinner. I hope the wine tastes as good as the lies did." Then I turned, calmly, and walked back to our table. But it wasn't over yet. Ethan didn't sit. He remained standing, frozen, watching Sophie tremble, watching Lucas pretend to find his voice, watching the whole illusion fall apart. I glanced at the waiter. "Could we have a private room, please?" I asked gently. "And if possible, could you merge our table with theirs?" The waiter paused, unsure, but nodded. "Of course, ma'am, right away." 5 minutes later, we were seated in a quiet back room, the soft lighting making the silence feel even heavier. 4 people, 1 table, no hiding. Ethan sat beside me. Lucas and Sophie sat across. They looked like kids caught cheating on an exam, afraid, exposed. No one touched the silverware. No one sipped water. The air felt thick. Finally, Lucas spoke. "Clara, I don't even know where to begin." I leaned forward, my voice steady. "Start 3 days ago, when you confirmed the dinner reservation and left it open on your screen." He froze. Sophie looked down, face flushed with shame. "I read every message," I continued, "every photo, every lie. I know about Santa Fe, about the hotel receipts, about the meetings that weren't meetings." Sophie whispered, "I'm so sorry." I turned to Ethan. "He's my husband. She's your wife. The least we deserve is honesty, to our faces." Ethan didn't speak. His eyes stayed locked on Sophie. She tried, she really did. "It started as a friendship," she said. "We were both lonely." Lucas listened, and "You have a husband who listens," Ethan interrupted, his voice sharp. "I redesigned your office so you'd feel inspired every day. I packed your kids' lunches when you worked late. I believed in you. And you paid me back like this?" Lucas tried too. "Clara, I made a mistake." "No, Lucas," I cut him off. "You made a series of choices. One text at a time, one dinner reservation at a time, and now you get to live with those choices." I reached into my purse and pulled out a hotel keycard. "I've booked a room at the Celeste across the street. I'll be staying there tonight. I suggest you not be home when I return on Monday." Lucas panicked. "Please, don't do this. I'll fix it. I'll cut her off. I'll go to therapy." "You can't fix a house that's already rotten at the foundation," I said. Then I turned to Ethan. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way." He nodded slowly. "No, thank you. I needed to see it with my own eyes." I stood up, straightened my dress, looked one last time at the people who thought they could lie forever. "I wish you both luck," I said. "Not because I forgive you, but because karma doesn't care how sorry you are." Then Ethan and I walked out of that room together, leaving behind the broken pieces they tried to keep hidden. And the secret dinner they planned? They'll never forget it. The private room was quiet, not peaceful, just quiet in that uncomfortable, heavy kind of way. The kind of silence that fills the air after something important breaks. A waiter gently closed the door behind us, leaving just the 4 of us at the table. Lucas sat directly across from me. Sophie sat beside him, her face pale and her fingers fidgeting in her lap. Ethan was next to me, silent, eyes locked on the tablecloth like he was staring into something he didn't want to believe was real. No one touched the glasses of water. No one adjusted their chairs. Even the sound of distant music outside the room felt far away, like the rest of the world had disappeared, leaving us in this uncomfortable bubble of truth. Lucas tried to speak first. "Clara, I don't know how we got here." I looked at him for a long moment. He looked smaller now, like the lies he carried had finally gotten too heavy. "Start 3 days ago," I said, voice calm. "When you left your calendar open and I saw the reservation." He blinked, stunned, like it hadn't even crossed his mind that something so small could undo him. Sophie dropped her eyes, clearly remembering that day too. "I saw everything, Lucas, every message, every photo, every late-night client dinner that wasn't. I know about Santa Fe, the hotel rooms, the flowers, all of it." He opened his mouth to speak again, but I lifted my hand. I wasn't here for excuses. I wasn't here to be convinced not to feel betrayed. I had spent too long pretending not to know. That part of me was gone now. Sophie finally spoke, voice trembling. "Clara, I'm sorry, truly. I never meant for it to go this far." I turned to Ethan, not even bothering to respond to her yet. He hadn't said a word since sitting down. His hands were clenched into fists on his lap. His eyes stayed fixed on Sophie. "You told me we were just friends," he said quietly, his voice shaking, "that he was helping you through a stressful quarter at work. That's what you said, Sophie. While I was home with the kids. While I was redoing your office space and celebrating your promotions." Sophie wiped at her eyes. "It started small. I was lonely. You were always working late." Ethan's voice cut in, sharp now. "I was working late so we could buy that house you wanted. So we could finally take that trip to Italy you kept talking about." Lucas looked like he wanted to disappear. He placed both palms on the table and whispered, "Clara, please. I know I've done something terrible. I betrayed your trust. I destroyed the one thing I should have protected." I stared at him. 17 years together. Countless dinners, arguments, vacations, holidays, birthdays, all undone by his choices. Not one mistake. Many. "Lucas, the end didn't start tonight," I said. "It started the moment you looked at her the way you used to look at me." He looked down at the table, like a child scolded in front of the class. No words came out. And that said more than any apology ever could. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out a small keycard. I placed it on the table between us. "This is for a room at the Celeste Hotel across the street. I'm staying there tonight. And when I return on Monday, it would be best if you weren't at the house." Sophie gasped. Lucas's eyes went wide. "Clara, please don't do this." "You already did this," I said, my tone steady. "I'm just finally letting the consequences show." He leaned forward, desperate now. "I'll do anything. I'll cut her off. I'll delete everything. I'll go to therapy. Just give me a chance." I gave a dry, bitter laugh. "You don't rebuild a house when the foundation is full of rot, Lucas. You tear it down. You start over." Then I turned back to Ethan. "I'm sorry you had to find out like this." He nodded, slowly. "Don't be. I needed the truth. Even if it hurts. At least now I know." We stood up together. Neither of us looked back. Lucas was still pleading softly. Sophie had buried her face in her hands, but none of it mattered now. Outside, the air felt cooler, lighter, like stepping out of a box that had been slowly shrinking around me for years. Ethan walked beside me in silence. We didn't speak until we reached the hotel. At the door to my room, I turned to him. "Thank you for coming. I didn't want to go through that alone." He gave me a soft, understanding smile. "You didn't have to." For a moment, we stood there in silence. "I don't know what happens next," I said. "Me neither," he replied. "But I think tonight, everything needed to break, for both of us." I nodded. Then I slipped into my room and closed the door. I leaned against it, the quiet pressing against my back like a wall that finally stopped shaking. Then the tears came. Not pretty ones, not silent ones, but full-body sobs that carried every emotion I had swallowed for years. I cried for every moment I thought I was loved while I was actually being lied to. I cried for the woman I used to be, the one who always forgave, who always waited, who never questioned. I let it all out. When I finally looked up, my reflection in the window stared back. Alone, but strong. I wasn't broken. I was clearing out the pieces that didn't belong anymore, and from this moment forward, I knew something for sure. I wouldn't lose myself for someone who could lie so easily while looking me in the eyes. The next morning, I woke up in the Celeste Hotel to a sky still wrapped in soft fog. The light peeked through the curtains, quiet and gray. It was the kind of morning that usually felt lazy and calm, but this one felt different, like I was starting over, not just from last night, but from the last 17 years. I got dressed slowly, no rush, no plans, just a calm decision to go home, not to forgive, not to fix, but to finish. I didn't need to explain anything anymore, not to Lucas, not to myself. When I walked into the house, Lucas was already there, sitting on the couch like a man waiting for judgment. His hair was messy, his shirt wrinkled and half-buttoned. He looked like he hadn't slept. As soon as he saw me, he stood up fast, eyes wide with panic. "Clara, we need to talk," he said. I placed my purse on the table and gave him a nod. "Okay, talk." He moved closer, his voice shaky. "I know I messed up. I know I betrayed everything we had, but I'm ready to fix it. I'll do anything. Counseling, therapy, cutting off contact. I've already told Sophie it's over. She left the city." I blinked, surprised. "She left?" He nodded, swallowing hard. "Her coworkers said she quit and moved back to Santa Barbara this morning. She couldn't handle the office finding out. I guess everyone knows." I raised an eyebrow. "Yes, they do. I made sure of it." His eyes snapped up to mine. "You told people?" "I didn't do it for revenge, Lucas," I said calmly. "I did it because I won't lie for you anymore. I called your mother. I told Mark and Jenna. Even your college friends, the ones you used to act perfect around. I told them exactly what happened. That you cheated on me. That you built a fake relationship on top of our marriage. That you kissed another woman while I waited at home, setting the table." Lucas's face turned red. His voice cracked. "You've destroyed my reputation. Do you know what this will do to my name at the company? What people will say?" That made me laugh. Not loudly, just that dry, bitter kind of laugh that comes from finally seeing someone's true face. "Your reputation?" I said. "That's what you care about? You destroyed our marriage, Lucas. I just stopped protecting the mask you wore." He stepped closer again, his hand reaching for mine. "Clara, please, I know I've lost your trust, but I still love you. I really do." I stepped back, slowly. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have whispered someone else's name while holding me in your arms. Love doesn't survive in lies. Love doesn't feel like walking on eggshells. Love doesn't come home smelling like someone else's perfume." He dropped to the couch again, head in his hands. "She didn't mean anything. It was a mistake." "No, Lucas," I said, my voice sharp now. "It was a pattern. You chose her again and again, every dinner, every lie, every time you sent her a message while I was sitting next to you on the couch." He shook his head. "If you leave, you'll ruin my life." I looked him straight in the eyes. "Number, I'll save mine." And that was the last conversation we had that day. I walked upstairs, grabbed a suitcase, and began packing the things I needed. Not just clothes, but peace. I was no longer waiting for an apology to fix what I already knew was broken. The next few days passed with Lucas trying every way he could to win me back. Flowers sent to work. Voicemails full of regret. A 4-page email titled, "Everything I Finally Understand." I didn't reply. I didn't need another apology. I needed freedom. So I made it official. I hired a lawyer and filed for divorce. 3 weeks later, a friend called me out of the blue. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "I just saw Lucas and Sophie sitting at a cafe in the suburbs. They looked miserable." 2 days after that, I received one last message from Lucas. No flowers. No grand speech. I tried to move on with her, but there's nothing left. She doesn't smile at me anymore, and I don't see you in her eyes. I didn't answer, because I didn't need to. A few days later, I noticed that Lucas had deactivated all his social media accounts. He also quietly stepped down from his position at the company board for personal reasons. That was the Lucas I used to know, obsessed with keeping his image spotless. Now, the mask was gone, and he had no one left to lie to. Spring came early that year. I remember waking up one Saturday morning in my new apartment and seeing light pour across the dark wooden floor. It was warm, still, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt calm. Then my phone rang. It was Ethan. "Coffee at Tanner's?" he asked. I smiled, glancing at the time. 9:12 a.m. "I'm in," I replied. "Give me 15 minutes." Ethan and I had kept in touch since that night at Lumiere. At first, it was just a few polite texts, then weekend meetups, no pressure, no questions about the future. Just two people who had been broken the same way, figuring out how to stand again. When I got to the cafe, he was already sitting at our usual table. Notebook open, 2 lattes waiting. "I guessed right," he said, sliding one toward me. "I think you're the only one who ever remembers my coffee order," I smiled, taking a sip. "Lucas got it wrong for 17 years. We both laughed, not bitterly, not painfully, but in a way that felt lighter, easier. "I finalized the divorce last week," Ethan said, quietly. "Sophie didn't say much, just left a note. I'm sorry for making you lose faith in love." I looked at him. "Did you?" He met my eyes. "Number. Because I'm learning to believe again, not in promises but in actions." I didn't say anything right away, I just nodded. Because in that moment I realized something. I had stopped waiting for Lucas to come back, and started walking towards something real. The months after that conversation with Ethan passed more quietly than I expected. There were no dramatic turning points, no sudden love stories, and no rush to replace what had been lost. And honestly, that's what made it beautiful. For once, everything moved slowly, gently, and on my terms. I went back to teaching. I picked up a weekend photography class I'd always put off. I filled my new apartment with small green plants, soft lighting, and open windows. There were no shadows left to hide in. I didn't need to check anyone's calendar or wait for a late-night text. The silence in my life wasn't scary anymore. It was peaceful. It was mine. Ethan became a regular part of that peace. Not in the way Lucas once had, where love came with expectations and weight, but in a way that felt easy. He started visiting my classroom once a month, speaking to my students about sustainable design and creative workspaces. He never missed a single lecture. And every time he stood there, passionate and kind, I felt a quiet spark. Not a fire, not yet, but a warm light I had forgotten I could feel. One day, after one of his lectures, I invited him over for dinner. Just the two of us. Nothing fancy. Pizza on my balcony, watching the city skyline shimmer through the soft summer dusk. "Do you think we've changed?" I asked him that night, wrapping a knit blanket over my lap as the breeze picked up. He looked at me, thoughtful. "No," he said. "I think we're becoming who we were always meant to be." His answer landed deep inside me, because it felt true. I hadn't changed into someone new. I had simply removed the version of me who kept shrinking to make space for someone else's comfort. Weeks passed, then months. We walked through farmers' markets, attended open-air concerts, and shared quiet moments. No labels, no pressure. We were two people who understood loss, and somehow that made every moment feel more honest. Then, one evening, as we walked along the river after a jazz concert, Ethan stopped. "Clara," he said, his voice steady, "I'm not in a rush. I don't want to push you, but if one day you're ready, not for a promise, not for a ring, but just for something real, I'd like to try." I looked at him. His eyes didn't ask me for anything I wasn't ready to give. They were just open, waiting, honest. "I'm not ready to love like I used to," I said carefully. "But if it's the kind of love you're describing, where there's no hiding, no pretending, then maybe I've already started." He didn't speak. He just reached for my hand, gently, with no urgency. And for the first time in years, someone touched me and didn't ask for anything except to be present. That was the night I realized something important. Love doesn't always come after the pain is gone. Sometimes it arrives while you're still healing, but in the right hands, it doesn't hurt. It helps. Almost a year later, I received an invitation in the mail. It was for a retirement celebration for Professor Martha Benson, my PhD advisor. She was a woman I deeply respected, and someone who had guided me through some of the hardest years of my academic life. The event was being held at the Lyre Hotel, classy, calm, and full of familiar faces. I arrived early in a simple navy dress, wearing my mother's pearl earrings. In my hand was a small wrapped book, an out-of-print text Martha had once mentioned loving during a seminar. I had no plans beyond giving her the gift and enjoying a quiet evening of conversation. But then I saw him. Lucas. He stood near the wine table, thinner than before, gray beginning to show at his temples. He was still well-dressed, still put together, but something was different. His confidence was gone. He looked like someone who had finally seen himself without filters. When he spotted me, we both paused. Then he walked over, slowly, wine glass in hand. "Clara," he said, his voice quieter than I remembered. "I didn't think I'd see you here." "I didn't think I'd see you either," I replied. My tone was calm, polite. He gave a faint smile. "Professor Benson is the last person who still talks to me after everything." I nodded. "She always sees the best in people." He looked at me for a long time, like he was searching for something. Finally, he sighed. "I owe you an apology, a real one. Not because I want anything from you, but because I need to say it." I let the silence sit for a moment. I didn't interrupt him. "When everything fell apart, I thought I'd be able to fix it," he continued. "That I could clean it up, hide it. But what I lost was more than a job or a reputation. I lost myself. And what I had with you? I ruined that long before you found out." I looked at him, not with hate, not with sadness, just as someone who had let go. "I hope you find peace, Lucas," I said softly. He nodded. "Are you okay now?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I'm rebuilding my life, on my own terms." Just then, Ethan walked into the room. He wore a dark blazer, simple, confident. When he saw me, he smiled. That smile I had come to call the light at the end of the tunnel. Lucas followed my gaze, then looked back at me and nodded in understanding. "He's a good man," he said. "You deserve a fresh start." I placed my hand over my heart, the same one that had once been crushed under lies. "Thank you," I said honestly. "And so do you. But start when you're ready, and only when you know you won't hurt someone else again." Lucas gave me space then, stepping back. That moment felt like closing a door gently, not slamming it. Later that night, Ethan and I sat side by side, laughing with old friends, sharing stories, dancing slowly under golden lights. No big declarations. No rushing into anything. Just the quiet company of someone who had been broken too, and now, like me, was rebuilding with care. As we walked out under the stars, I squeezed his hand. "There was a time I thought betrayal was the end," I said softly. "And now?" he asked. "Now, I think it was a pause, a moment that forced me to turn toward a better path." And we walked on, without looking back, because the past had already closed itself. The present was finally honest, and the future, it was beginning, one quiet step at a time. I didn't just survive the betrayal. I found myself again, not through revenge, but by choosing truth, peace, and the kind of love that doesn't ask me to lose myself. So, let me ask you this. Was Clara too strong? Or was she finally strong enough? What would you have done if you were her? Let me know in the comments. And if you believe that healing is stronger than heartbreak, don't forget to like, share, and follow this channel for more powerful, real-life stories that speak to the heart.